When my daughter hugged me at my husband's funeral, I thought it was just comfort, just the way children reach for their parents when the world feels heavy. But then she leaned closer and whispered something into my ear that shattered every memory I thought I had. I froze. My knees felt weak. For a moment, the soft murmur of the mourners around me, the low hum of the organ, the scent of lilies and damp earth, all of it disappeared. It had been a gray morning. The sky wept with me, or so it felt, as if even the heavens knew the weight of the day. The small church smelled of polished wood and faint incense. Chairs lined up in perfect rows, each occupied by faces I had known for years, yet all of them blurred together as I walked down the aisle. My husband, Thomas, lay in a simple casket, his face calm, like he was only sleeping. I wanted to reach out and shake him awake, to tell him it wasn't fair, that we weren't ready, that I couldn't do this without him. My daughter, Lily, was holding my hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. I could feel her pulse against mine, rapid, nervous, uncertain. She had always been strong, my little girl with her father's stubborn chin and my own careful mind. But today she seemed smaller, more fragile, and I clung to her as if she could hold me together. We walked together to the front, where the minister's voice was soft, almost distant, as if he were reciting from another life. "Thomas Robert Harris," he said, and my chest tightened. "Beloved husband, father, and friend." The words washed over me, hollow yet heavy. I couldn't hear the rest, only the echo of our life together. The quiet mornings with coffee, the laughter in the kitchen, the way he smelled after shaving. And then the sudden jarring contrast, the last 2 weeks of his illness, the helplessness, the frantic hospital nights. I remembered the day it began. Thomas had brushed off the first signs of weakness, insisting he was fine, that I worried too much. But I saw it. The pale skin, the way his hands shook while making breakfast, the cough he tried to hide behind a laugh. He had always been the strong one, the protector, the person who shielded our little family from everything. And now, there I was, standing over him, unable to protect him from what was coming. The funeral was a blur. People offered condolences in quiet tones, pressing hands into mine, their eyes glossy with their own grief. I nodded, smiled faintly, even whispered thank yous, but I didn't truly hear them. My mind was elsewhere, replaying every argument I'd had with Thomas, every embrace, every word left unsaid. And then Lily was beside me again, tugging gently at my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, "it's going to be okay." Her voice, soft and trembling, should have comforted me, but something in the tone made me uneasy, a hesitation I couldn't place. I squeezed her hand back, forcing a smile. "I know, sweetie, I know." Later, as people filed past the casket, leaving flowers and murmured prayers, I noticed a photograph tucked among the bouquets. It was of Thomas and me on our wedding day, smiling, naive, utterly convinced we had forever. I reached out to touch it, feeling the cold plastic of the frame, and for a fleeting second, I felt like I could reach into the past and hold him again. After the final words, the organist played a hymn I didn't recognize. The music felt heavy, deliberate. I followed the procession outside, where the air was damp and sharp, carrying the smell of wet soil and pine. I watched as the casket was lowered into the ground, each drop of dirt a reminder that he was truly gone. My knees buckled slightly, and Lily caught me. She held me in a quiet, unwavering hug, and I thought, for a brief moment, that maybe her arms could hold all the pain for both of us. And then she whispered, "You didn't know, did you?" The words were soft, barely audible over the murmur of the crowd, yet they struck me like a hammer to the chest. I froze, the hug tightening around me. "What do you mean?" I managed to choke out. Her eyes darted nervously toward the ground. "Everything. About him. And about you." Her words made no sense. How could she know something I didn't? My mind spun, trying to grasp the meaning, the implications. The world around me became muted, and all I could hear was the soft, almost guilty tremor in her voice. That night, back at the house, the quiet was unbearable. Thomas's absence was everywhere, in the creak of the stairs, in the scent of his aftershave that lingered in the hallway, in the empty chair at the dinner table. Lily barely spoke, retreating into herself, her eyes distant. I wanted to ask her again about what she had whispered, but fear held me back. What if the truth was worse than grief itself? Before Thomas got sick, our life was ordinary and beautiful in its own way. We had a modest home with creaking floors and a small garden, a life full of Saturday mornings with pancakes and Sunday evening walks. I worked as a freelance editor from home, often with Lily perched on the couch beside me, reading or sketching. Thomas worked long hours in finance, always punctual, always dependable. He had a quiet sense of humor, the kind that made you chuckle when no one else did. Our life was simple, grounded, predictable, and I had taken comfort in that predictability. Lily, though young, had always been perceptive. She could read people with an uncanny intuition, sometimes scaring me with her observations. I often joked with Thomas that our daughter had the eyes of a hawk and the memory of an elephant. But today, as I watched her sit in the corner of our living room, hugging her knees, I realized that she knew something that would unravel not just my grief, but the entire life I thought I knew. And so the questions began, gnawing at the edges of my mind. What had she seen? What had she heard? And more importantly, what had Thomas hidden from me that my own daughter now carried like a secret dagger? The night dragged on, and I barely slept. I kept imagining the whisper, the weight of her words pressing into my ear. Everything we had built, every laugh, every argument, every promise, suddenly fragile, uncertain, as if a thread had been pulled and the whole tapestry was unraveling. I didn't know it then, but that whisper at the graveside was the beginning of a journey that would shake every truth I had held about my husband, my marriage, and even my role as a mother. The kind of journey that forces you to ask yourself, can you really ever know someone? Or even yourself? The days after the funeral were a haze of condolences, paperwork, and whispered questions from distant relatives. Flowers still cluttered the hallway, their petals starting to wilt, and every corner of the house smelled faintly of Thomas, his cologne, his shaving cream, even the faint lingering scent of his pipe tobacco from years ago. It was comforting in a way, but also cruel. A reminder that he wasn't coming back to refill the kettle or toss his jacket over the chair. Lily had become quieter than usual. She would wander the house with her sketchbook, drawing in silence, sometimes muttering things under her breath that I couldn't catch. At first, I thought it was grief. Kids, I reasoned, process loss differently. But there was something in the tilt of her head, the way her eyes would flick toward me that made me uneasy. She carried a secret. I could feel it in the pause of her breathing, in the way her fingers fidgeted with the pencil. Before Thomas got sick, our life had been ordinary in a comforting way. I'd wake early, make coffee, listen to the hum of the city outside the window while Lily slowly got ready for school. Thomas would come home in the evenings, drop his briefcase, and wrap us both in his arms. Dinner was simple. Pasta, roasted vegetables, occasional steak on special nights. We had little traditions, tiny routines that made the day feel steady, anchored. I often think back to the morning he proposed. It was raining, a drizzle soft enough to miss the pavement. We were walking along the park near our apartment, and he stopped under the branches of an old oak tree, shaking droplets from his coat. I laughed at him, and then he held out the ring. I said yes before I realized I had to think. That day had felt so certain, so full of possibility. And all these years later, I would find out how little of that certainty was real. Thomas and I weren't perfect, of course. We argued about small things, the thermostat, money, whose turn it was to wash the dishes. But those arguments were minor waves in a sea that otherwise felt calm. I loved him deeply. I trusted him completely, and that trust made what was coming all the more devastating. Lily's presence was my anchor after the funeral, but she also began to feel like a warning I couldn't interpret. One evening, as I sorted through Thomas's papers, bills, letters, old tax documents, she came into the study quietly. "Mom," she said, "why didn't Dad ever talk about everything?" "Everything?" I asked, glancing at her. Her eyes were wide, innocent, but there was something calculating behind them. The things he did, the people he knew, the other things, she trailed off. I froze, setting down the stack of letters. "Lily, your father, he loved you. He loved us. What makes you say such things?" She didn't answer. Instead, she scribbled in her sketchbook, the pencil scratching across the paper in uneven lines. I could see the shadow of worry on her face, and a knot formed in my stomach. I wanted to laugh it off, to say she was imagining things, but the tone of her voice, so unlike her usual certainty, made my chest tighten. As the days passed, I noticed more, small, almost imperceptible oddities. Thomas had always paid our bills online, but I found a few statements in the desk drawer that seemed off. Unfamiliar transactions, transfers I didn't recognize. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was nothing, that maybe I had just missed some routine financial chores. Then there were the letters, handwritten, folded with neat precision, tucked behind books I had organized 1,000 times. They were addressed to Thomas, but the handwriting wasn't his. The tone was intimate, too familiar, and though I didn't read them all at first, a single sentence was enough to make my stomach twist. "I can't wait to see you again. Soon we'll have everything we dreamed of without her." I swallowed hard. I wanted to throw the letters away, burn them, forget I had ever seen them. But Lily had been watching. She didn't say anything, just leaned against the doorframe, her small arms folded, eyes wide like she knew more than I did and was testing me silently. It was a quiet tension that filled the house. Lily stopped talking about school projects, her friends, anything trivial. She would glance at me, then at her drawings, always seeming to measure how much I knew. I began to question myself. Had I missed something all these years? Could Thomas really have kept secrets from me? Not just minor ones, but things that would shake the foundation of our life together. I tried to distract myself with routine, filling the fridge, washing clothes, planning meals, but every corner of the house, every object, his favorite mug, the worn-out armchair, the tiny scuff on the stair railing, reminded me of him and the invisible things he left behind. And then came the first clue that I couldn't ignore. It was small, almost laughable in hindsight, but it lodged in my mind like a splinter. Lily had found a key, a small silver key hidden in an envelope under Thomas's old wallet. She showed it to me one evening, her face pale. "Mom," she asked, "what's this?" I took it, turning it over in my hand. No number, no label, just cold metal. I tried to brush it off. "Probably something for the filing cabinet. Don't worry about it, sweetie." But I noticed the way her fingers lingered on the edge of the key, how she didn't let go immediately, her eyes flicking toward the hall where the spare room door was. My heart skipped. Something was hidden in this house, something Thomas had kept from both of us, and somehow my daughter knew more than she should. That night, as I lay awake, listening to the faint hum of the radiator, I realized the peace I thought I had after the funeral was an illusion. Thomas's death hadn't ended the story. It had only begun a different one with secrets, half-truths, and whispers that could unravel everything I had believed about my family. And I knew, deep down, that Lily's whispered words at the graveside were only the beginning. Whatever she had told me, whatever truth she carried, it would change everything, not just my understanding of Thomas, but of myself as a wife, a mother, and a woman who thought she knew the person she loved most in the world. The unease didn't hit me all at once. It crept in, slow and quiet, like the fog that rolls over a river at dawn. Every day I noticed small things, things I had overlooked for years, things that suddenly didn't make sense. For instance, the way Thomas's phone had always been just in case, always charging on the kitchen counter, seemingly innocent. Now, in its absence, I realized how often he had insisted on privacy, shutting it in a drawer, brushing off my curiosity with a laugh or a gentle scolding. "Some things, love, are mine alone," he'd say. I had laughed, thinking it was harmless, a small quirk. But now, without him, I began to wonder what he had kept and why. Then there was the key Lily had found. I had tried to forget it, set it on the counter, and moved on, but her eyes kept bringing it back. She would glance at it, then at me, like a quiet judge waiting for a confession. One evening, I finally asked, my voice trembling slightly, "Lily, you know something about this, don't you?" She hesitated, twisting the key in her fingers. I think you should know. You deserve to know." That's all she said, and I felt the old panic rising in my chest. My mind began to replay every moment of our life, every interaction, searching for cracks I hadn't seen. The first overt sign of trouble came a week later. I was going through Thomas's papers, sorting bills, letters, and receipts, when I noticed an envelope I hadn't seen before. It was thick, cream-colored, sealed with red wax. The handwriting on the front was precise, unfamiliar. I held it, feeling the weight of it in my hands. There was no date, no return address. I tore it open carefully. Inside were photographs. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Images of Thomas with a woman I didn't know, at restaurants, laughing, holding hands. Some were intimate, private moments, too private for a stranger. My stomach dropped. I wanted to throw the photos away, to deny what I was seeing, but I couldn't look away. "Mom?" Lily's voice startled me. She had followed me quietly into the study. "I saw the photos. I found them a while ago." My hands shook. Who is she?" Lily didn't answer immediately. She bit her lip, fidgeting with the corner of her sweater. Then, in a whisper that made my blood run cold, she said, "It's not just that, Mom. There's more. I think he wasn't just keeping secrets from you. He was hiding everything from you, and maybe from me too." The words hit like a physical blow. I sank into the chair, my eyes fixed on the photos, my mind spinning. All those years, I had thought I knew Thomas. I had thought our marriage was open, loving, real. But these images, and the way Lily said, "maybe from me too," planted a seed of fear I couldn't shake. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. Maybe there was an explanation, a misunderstanding, a business arrangement, some harmless friendship. But the photographs didn't feel harmless. The intimacy, the laughter, the way they leaned into each other, it was familiar in the way lovers become familiar, in the way trust is built over time, and I hadn't known. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked the house silently, passing Thomas's side of the bed, noticing the empty space where he used to read before sleep, the faint scent of his aftershave that lingered despite my cleaning. Everything was a reminder of him, and yet everything was suddenly a question. Who was he really? What had he kept from me? Over the next few days, small details continued to pile up. A bank statement tucked in a drawer, a wire transfer to a name I didn't recognize, an address in a notebook, carefully written, one I had never visited. And then there were the calls, or rather the absence of calls, that made me question everything. People Thomas had mentioned as friends never showed up at the funeral. Relatives who had seemed close had no knowledge of certain events in his life. And all the while, Lily watched me. She didn't push, didn't speak too much, but the way she observed me, the way she waited for me to notice the key, the envelope, the photographs, it was as if she knew something I didn't, as if she had been carrying the burden of this knowledge for a long time. I began to notice patterns in her behavior, too. She would ask questions about people I barely remembered, about old neighbors, about colleagues of Thomas's. She had an uncanny way of phrasing things that made me feel like I was missing some crucial piece of a puzzle. One evening, she came to me quietly while I was sorting the kitchen drawers. "Mom," she said, "why didn't Dad ever talk about me, about my real family?" I froze, my hands stilled on the utensils I was organizing. "Lily, what do you mean?" Her voice was small but steady. "I mean, why didn't he tell you the truth about where I came from?" The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the counter, trying to steady myself. My mind raced. What could she possibly mean? Lily had always known Thomas as her father, her rock, her protector. But the way she said it, with that quiet certainty, made my heart pound in my chest. Something had been hidden from me all along, something that wasn't just about Thomas's mistakes, but about my own life, my own choices. I wanted to cry, to scream, to shake her for saying such a thing. But instead, I found myself sitting on the floor, pulling her into my lap, holding her tight. Her head rested against my shoulder, and I could feel her tremble. "I don't understand. I don't understand any of it." She shook her head, barely audible. "I'll show you, Mom. I'll show you everything." And in that moment, I realized that whatever secret she carried, whatever truth had been hidden, was about to change everything I thought I knew, not just about Thomas, not just about my marriage, but about my very life as a mother, as a woman who had built a world around love, trust, and family. The truth didn't come gently. It crashed into me like a wave I couldn't dodge, leaving me gasping for air and grasping at pieces of my old life that no longer existed. It started the morning Lily finally sat me down in the living room. The house was quiet, empty of the lingering scent of Thomas that had haunted me for weeks. She held the silver key in her hand, turning it over like it was both a promise and a warning. "Mom," she said softly, "I couldn't tell you before. I wasn't ready. And honestly, I didn't know if you could handle it." My heart hammered. "Handle what, Lily? Please, just tell me." She took a deep breath, and for a moment I thought she might retreat, change her mind. But then her eyes met mine, steady, unwavering, and I knew she would tell me, no matter the cost. "It's about Dad and me." I blinked. "You mean Thomas?" She nodded. "Yes, and not in the way you think." I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind screamed at me to breathe, to slow down, to make sense of words that didn't make sense. "Explain." Lily swallowed, her small hands tightening around the key. "You always believed I was your daughter, Thomas's daughter, but I'm not really." I froze, my chest constricted. The words didn't sink in at first. "Not your daughter? Lily, what are you saying?" She reached for my hand, her grip firm, as if trying to anchor both of us to the same reality. "I found out, after you thought Dad was gone, I found out things he never told you, things he couldn't tell you, and it changes everything." My mind went numb. Images of our life together flashed in my head. Her first steps, her school recitals, birthdays, vacations, all of it had felt real, felt ours, and yet now every memory was tinged with doubt, suspicion, betrayal. "Mom," Lily whispered, her voice breaking, he lied to both of us, about me, about you, about everything." I wanted to ask how. I wanted to scream. I wanted to curl up and disappear into the floor, but I couldn't. I forced myself to sit up, searching her eyes for the truth. "Lily, what exactly did he lie about?" She hesitated, trembling. He wasn't my father, my real father. He's someone else." Thomas knew. He knew the truth all along, but he kept it from you, from both of us. He wanted to protect you, or maybe protect himself. I don't know which. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I felt like the air had been stolen from me. All these years? I whispered. All these years he lied? She nodded slowly, tears welling up. And I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared, scared you'd hate him, scared you'd hate me. I looked at her, and suddenly my grief for Thomas was tangled with something darker: anger, confusion, betrayal. Every moment I had shared with him now felt tainted. Every word he had spoken now carried the weight of deceit. And the worst part? He had taken a secret to his grave that not only erased the life I thought I had built, but questioned everything I thought I knew about myself. Why? Why would he do this? I asked, my voice shaking. Why not tell me? Why lie for all these years? Lily's fingers tightened around mine. Because he wanted to keep the family together. Because he thought maybe if you never knew, we could all still be happy. But he was wrong, so wrong. I sank back into the couch, my mind spinning, my body trembling. My husband, the man I loved, the man I had trusted with my heart, my life, my daughter, had been hiding a truth so profound it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. "Mom," Lily said again, her voice soft but urgent, "there's more. I found things, letters, old documents, even pictures, things he kept hidden from both of us." I shook my head, too overwhelmed to speak, my eyes filled with tears I couldn't hold back. All those years of love, of trust, of memories, now shadowed by secrecy and deceit. "And he loved you," Lily added after a pause. "Maybe that's why he didn't tell you. But, Mom, it doesn't change that I'm not who you thought I was." I hugged her tightly, as if by holding her close I could hold the world together. But even in that embrace, a piece of me was breaking. I was grieving not only the man I had loved, but the illusion of the family I had believed in, the life I thought I knew. The revelation hung over us, heavy and suffocating. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and yet, strangely, I also felt a strange clarity. The whispers at the funeral, the subtle hints, the key, the letters, the photos, they all made sense now. Lily's secret was a warning, a prelude to the storm that was finally here. I realized that the woman I had been, the trusting wife, the unquestioning mother, no longer existed. In her place was someone who would have to navigate a maze of lies, of betrayal, of hidden truths to find the real life beneath. And as I looked at Lily, I understood something else. She had been carrying part of the burden, protecting me, protecting herself, while I had been blind. Now, the weight of truth rested on both of us, and whether we crumbled under it or emerged stronger, it would change everything. After that night, I couldn't stay still. The house, once a haven of quiet routines and soft laughter, had become a maze of secrets and shadows. Every corner whispered Thomas's deception. Every object held a memory now tainted by lies. I needed to understand. I needed to know the full story before I could even begin to breathe again. Lily and I started with the papers Thomas had left behind. His filing cabinet, the one I had assumed contained only bills and tax forms, was suddenly a treasure trove of hidden truths. There were letters addressed to unfamiliar names, bank statements with unrecognizable transactions, even legal documents that hinted at identities and arrangements I had never imagined. I sifted through them slowly, carefully, trying to keep my hands steady while my mind reeled. Some documents were mundane, but others were significant. Old adoption papers, letters from a law firm, a medical record that seemed to confirm the impossibility of what Lily had told me. My stomach twisted as I realized the truth I had suspected was far worse than I had imagined. Lily watched me, silent but present. Her presence was grounding even as the walls of my life crumbled around me. "Mom," she said softly, "I can help. We can do this together." Her words gave me courage I didn't know I had. We decided to confront the hidden history, to uncover everything Thomas had buried in secrecy. The first step was calling the law firm whose letter had been tucked in the drawer. My hand shook as I dialed the number, each ring echoing in the silent house. When the receptionist answered, I asked for the attorney who had sent the correspondence. My voice trembled, but I forced calm into it. I'm calling about my daughter. There are documents that need clarification. My husband, he kept things from me, and I need to understand them fully. The attorney's tone was gentle but firm. I understand. Please provide your full name and your daughter's name, and we can schedule a meeting to go over the documents. Some of them are confidential, so you'll need to come in. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because finally there was a path forward, dread because I had no idea what I was about to discover. The next few days were a whirlwind of appointments, document reviews, and late-night conversations with Lily. Piece by piece, the story unfolded, each revelation more painful than the last. Thomas had known the truth about Lily's parentage all along. He had known the identity of her biological father, had concealed it from me, and had built our entire family life around a lie. And yet there were shades of complexity. Thomas had not acted out of malice, at least not entirely. There were moments where he had tried to protect us, shielding Lily from painful truths, preserving the life we had built, perhaps believing that ignorance was a kindness, but intention didn't erase impact. His deception had shaken the foundation of our trust, our sense of safety, our identities. I realized then that anger alone wouldn't suffice. I needed clarity. I needed to reclaim agency in a life that had been dictated by secrets. And so I began to make decisions, small ones at first, administrative and practical. Change locks, secure important documents, speak with the attorney about legal rights. Each action was a reclaiming of control, a way to tell the universe that I would not be passive in the face of betrayal. The confrontation came next. I arranged a meeting with a relative of Thomas's, someone I trusted, to discuss what I had uncovered. I laid out the documents, the letters, the adoption papers. I spoke in calm, deliberate sentences, even as my hands trembled and my heart raced. The relative listened, their expression darkening with each revelation. I didn't know he had gone this far, they admitted. We suspected he kept some things private, but not this. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. He built a life on lies, and now we have to decide what to do next. Lily deserves the truth, and I deserve to know who my family really is. Throughout all of this, Lily was by my side. Her presence was both a comfort and a reminder of what had been taken from us. She had been the one to deliver the first whisper at the funeral, the one to guide me toward the hidden truths. And now, as we confronted the past, she remained quiet but steadfast, a small beacon of courage in a storm of betrayal. The public consequences began slowly. Family members, neighbors, and friends eventually learned fragments of the story, some through careful disclosure, some through speculation. I found myself explaining, clarifying, correcting rumors. Each conversation was a test of composure, a balancing act between defending my daughter and reclaiming dignity. Some people were sympathetic, some judgmental, but most were shocked. It was as if the perfect veneer of our family had been shattered in an instant, revealing something raw, flawed, and painfully human underneath. And in those moments, I realized the depth of Thomas's deception. It wasn't just about hidden truths. It was about trust itself, the foundation of love, and the fragility of what we assume to know about the people closest to us. And yet, amidst the chaos, there was a strange clarity. I understood that the betrayal, while devastating, was also an opportunity, an opportunity to rebuild, to redefine my family, and to create new truths that were grounded not in secrecy, but in honesty. I began to see patterns in Thomas's actions, the ways he had tried, imperfectly, to protect both of us, and the ways he had failed. I realized that while grief and anger were natural, they could not define our future. Lily and I would have to navigate this together, armed with truth, resilience, and an understanding that life, even when shattered, could still be rebuilt. The truth has a strange way of traveling. You don't have to announce it for it to be known. It moves through glances, half-finished sentences, and the sudden softness in people's voices. By the second week after the funeral, I could feel it following me, the unspoken knowledge, the quiet speculation. At the grocery store, a woman I had known for years paused mid-sentence when she saw me. At church, people hugged me longer than usual, as if they were trying to offer comfort without asking the wrong question. Some looked at Lily with curiosity disguised as concern. Others avoided eye contact entirely. I hadn't told many people the full truth. I didn't owe it to them. But secrets, once cracked open, rarely stay contained. The first real confrontation came from Thomas's sister, Margaret. She asked to meet me for coffee. Neutral ground, she said. Her voice on the phone was careful, measured, the way people speak when they already know more than they're admitting. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the smell of burnt espresso hanging in the air. She stirred her drink without taking a sip. "I heard some things," she finally said. "About Lily, about Thomas." I didn't interrupt her. I had learned that silence often invites truth faster than argument. "He told me once," she continued slowly, "years ago, that there were complications, that things weren't simple. I didn't push. I thought it wasn't my place." My hands rested flat on the table. "And now?" "Now," she said, meeting my eyes, "I think he took away your right to choose." That sentence landed harder than anything else I had heard. Not the betrayal, not the lies, the theft of choice. I nodded. Yes, that's exactly what he did. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I loved my brother, but what he did was wrong. That acknowledgement mattered more than I expected. Not because it fixed anything, but because it named the injustice without trying to soften it. Word spread quietly after that. Not gossip, not cruelty, but awareness. People began to understand that Thomas, the dependable man they had known, had also been capable of deep deception. The image of him shifted, not into a villain, but into something more uncomfortable. A man who chose control over honesty. And Lily? Lily carried it all with a composure that both amazed and broke me. At school, a teacher gently asked if she was adjusting okay. A friend's mother stopped inviting her over, suddenly unsure how to act. Lily noticed everything. Children always do. One night, she sat at the kitchen table tracing circles in a notebook. "Do people think I'm different now?" she asked quietly. I sat beside her. "People think many things. That doesn't make them right." She nodded, then asked the question I had been dreading. "Do you think I'm different?" I reached for her hand. "No, I think I know you more clearly now." She exhaled, a breath she had been holding for years. The legal process moved forward in the background, clarifying documents, establishing rights, correcting records. Each appointment felt clinical, almost cold compared to the emotional earthquake we were living through. But it was necessary. Order had to be restored somewhere, even if it couldn't be restored everywhere. At one point, the attorney asked me, "Would you like to pursue further action against the estate?" I thought of Thomas, the man I had loved, the man who had betrayed me, the man who could no longer answer for his choices. "No," I said after a pause. "I want truth, not punishment." That answer surprised even me. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. The anger softened, not disappeared, but settled into something quieter, more manageable. I began to see Thomas not only as the architect of my pain, but as a flawed human being who made a catastrophic choice and believed, wrongly, that silence was safer than truth. That understanding didn't absolve him, but it freed me from living inside rage. The biggest moment came during a small family gathering. Nothing formal, just a few close relatives. Someone raised a glass to Thomas, calling him a good man who did his best. The room went quiet. I stood. "He loved us," I said calmly, "but love without honesty is not protection, it's control." No one argued, no one defended him. And in that silence, I felt something shift. The truth had finally been spoken out loud, not in anger, not in shame, but in clarity. That night, Lily and I sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the houses. "I'm glad you know," she said. "So am I replied. And for the first time since the funeral, the air felt lighter. Healing didn't arrive like forgiveness often does in stories, sudden, clean, complete. It came quietly, in fragments, in mornings where the house felt less heavy, in evenings where Lily laughed without checking my face first, in moments where Thomas's name could be spoken without the room tightening around it. We began by redefining our days. I started waking up earlier, not out of anxiety, but intention. I opened the curtains wide, let the light spill into rooms that had grown dim with grief. I cooked again, not the rushed meals of survival, but thoughtful ones. Soup that simmered, bread that took time, food that asked me to stay present. Lily returned to her routine slowly: school, drawing, long walks with headphones on. She began sketching faces again, not the fragmented ones she had drawn in the weeks after the funeral, but full expressions, people with eyes that met the viewer's gaze. One afternoon, I asked her if she wanted to know more about her biological father, about the parts of her story that had been hidden. She thought for a long time before answering. "Not yet," she said. "Right now, I want to know who I am, not where I came from." I respected that. Identity isn't something you uncover all at once. It's something you build, piece by piece, with choice. I began therapy, something I had always postponed for others. The first session, I surprised myself by crying over something small, the way Thomas used to leave his shoes by the door, always crooked, always in the way. "It's not the shoes," the therapist said gently. "No," I replied, "it's the realization that I loved someone who never fully trusted me." That truth sat with me for weeks, but slowly something shifted. I stopped measuring my worth against the lie he had constructed. I stopped asking what I had done wrong to deserve secrecy. I stopped viewing my marriage as a failure and began seeing it as a chapter, meaningful, flawed, formative. Lily noticed the change before I did. "You don't look tired all the time anymore," she said one morning. "I still am," I smiled, "just not in the same way." We talked more, not just about the past, but about the future, about who she wanted to be, about the kind of life she wanted to build. I listened without correcting, without steering. I let her lead. One evening, she said something that stayed with me. "You didn't lose your identity as my mother," she said. "You chose it every day." And she was right. Motherhood isn't biology alone. It's presence, it's consistency, it's choosing love even when the truth hurts. The community slowly recalibrated around us. The pity faded, the whispers stopped, people adjusted, as people always do. And in that adjustment, Lily and I found space to breathe. I donated Thomas's clothes. I reorganized the study. I kept some photographs, not out of obligation, but out of honesty. He had been part of my life. Pretending otherwise would be another lie, and I was done with lies. One afternoon, as I stood in the garden pulling weeds, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but acceptance, the kind that doesn't erase pain but gives it a place to rest. I realized then that the whisper at the funeral hadn't destroyed me, it had dismantled the illusion I was living inside. And that, painful as it was, had given me something precious, the chance to rebuild on truth. Lily joined me in the garden, sitting cross-legged in the dirt. "Mom, do you think Dad knew this would happen?" I considered the question carefully. I think he hoped it wouldn't, but truth always finds its way out. It doesn't do it to punish us, it does it to free us. She nodded, and in that quiet moment, surrounded by earth and air and the sound of life continuing, I knew we were going to be okay. Different, but okay. Sometimes the most painful moments in life don't come with shouting or slammed doors. They come as whispers, soft, almost gentle, spoken at the exact moment you think you've already survived the worst. When my daughter hugged me at my husband's funeral, I believed grief was the end of my story. I didn't know it was the beginning of truth. That whisper didn't just change how I remembered my marriage, it changed how I understood love, how I defined motherhood, how I learned that trust, once broken, doesn't always destroy us. Sometimes it teaches us who we are without illusion. I learned that being a mother isn't about biology or bloodlines. It's about the years you stay, the nights you show up, the choices you make even when no one is watching. And I learned something else too, that secrets kept for love are still secrets, and love that requires silence eventually demands a reckoning. Today, my daughter and I live with honesty instead of perfection, with clarity instead of comfort, and with a peace that doesn't pretend the past didn't hurt, but refuses to let it define the future. So now I want to ask you something from the heart. If you were in my place, would you want to know the truth, even if it shattered everything you believed? Or would you choose the comfort of the lie? If this story moved you, please tell me in the comments. I read them, and your words matter more than you know. Thank you for sitting with me through this story, for listening, and for supporting this space where real lives and real emotions are shared. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and support the channel so more stories like this can continue to find the people who need them. Until next time, take care of your heart and don't ignore the whispers.